From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Sweeney Gray. Ecuador's National Court of Justice has ordered the detention and extradition of the former president, Rafael Correa. He has been named in relation to the alleged kidnapping of the former politician, Fernando Balda, in Colombia in 2012. Correa supporters have been protesting for weeks over what they say are politically motivated charges. The court accepted the request of the prosecutor for Correa to be detained for failing to comply with an order to present himself regularly before the court. Correa, who now lives in Belgium, adamantly denies all accusations against him and presented himself voluntarily at the Ecuadorian consulate in Brussels on Monday.
Judge Daniela Camacho ordered to arrest the former President Rafael Correa, who was linked to the alleged kidnapping of the ex-lawmaker Fernando Balda. The Attorney General of Ecuador, Paul Perez, asked for the Interpol's issuing of red notice and to arrest and extradite the former president. The Balda's defense team and also the Attorney General said that former President Rafael Correa failed to comply with the precautionary measures to appear before the National Court of Justice. So it's all for now. We will keep you posted with more information as soon as we can. Back to you at the studio.
All right, we thank Denise for that report. Also in Ecuador, and according to the country's Foreign Affairs Ministry, the bodies of 2 other kidnapping victims were found on the border with Ecuador. According to the statement, they could belong to Oscar Velasquez and Katy Velasco. They said Colombian authorities found the bodies and are working on identifying them. Mexican President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador spoke at the presidential palace in Mexico following a meeting with the outgoing president Enrique Peña Nieto. He said he wouldn't use the presidential plane or the palace, the Peña's presidential residence, but instead would turn it into a cultural center for all Mexicans. As part of his austerity plan, he said he would tour the country once again, as he did during his campaign. He also said he will wait for the Electoral Authority to officially declare him the winner, as the votes are still being counted. López Obrador said he had also discussed energy reform and free trade agreements, and he praised Peña Nieto for not interfering with the elections.
Tenemos que ponernos de acuerdo.
We need to come to an agreement on many issues. Above all else, for the transition to be orderly, peaceful, and that there be no surprises, that there is certainty on financial issues. We are going to help during this time with a team that will inform themselves on the advances and what should take place in the proposal for the signing of this agreement. We approached issues such as energy reform, but teams will come in and work, which will be informed on this proposal, whilst I am president-elect.
Newspapers flew off the shelves the day after the elections that marked a turning point in Mexico's history. For the first time in over 80 years, neither the PRI nor the PAN will be in power.
Thousands gathered at the iconic Zocalo Square in Mexico City to celebrate the victory of Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Early results put him far ahead of the other 3 contenders.
I call for all Mexicans to reconciliate, to put unity above their own personal interests, to put our country first.
As he addressed the crowd on Sunday after the polls closed, the representative for the Together We'll Make History coalition promised to defend his principles.
I've kept my ideals and my principles. They are the most important thing to me. But I have to confess that I have ambitions too. I want to be remembered as a good president.
For one analyst, the election results also show a likely majority for López Obrador's coalition in both the Senate and the Chamber of Deputies.
This is the third shift of power in the history of our country. We are shifting to the left, and that has a great meaning.
Don Gregorio says he sold more than 100 newspapers in just a couple of minutes. The joy of this victory shared by many Mexicans.
Every newspaper with López Obrador on the cover sold out. He was successful because he did so well during the campaign.
I'm really glad. I can feel great vibes. It's been a long time since I walked through the streets and felt an air of calm. It feels like a new energy, and I am sure this is the beginning of lots of positive things, especially for the youth.
The winning candidate took a day to rest just before the meeting he is scheduled to have with outgoing President Enrique Peña Nieto. The latest numbers confirm Andrés Manuel López Obrador has won the presidency by a very large margin.
Venezuela and China are working on a new agreement to facilitate credit for oil projects. The Venezuelan Minister of the Economy and Finance, Simón Zerpa, is currently in Beijing to discuss oil cooperation and bilateral funding. Venezuela is one of the main beneficiaries of loans from the China Development Bank. Zerpa, who also has a meeting scheduled with the Chinese Foreign Vice Minister.
We are working on an agreement for oil production as a main point in our bilateral relations. We got a loan from the China Development Bank for an increase in production valued in $250 million. We are also working on a special loan granted by the Chinese government valued at $5 billion to invest in oil-related projects.
We're going to take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Now let's take a look at the latest glories and heartbreaks at the World Cup 2018 in Russia.
Thank you, Soini, and welcome to our Telesur Russia 2018 special World Cup coverage. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez, and here are today's headlines. We start with results from the last two games of the round of 16. After an intense match, England advanced to the quarterfinals, eliminating Colombia in a penalty shootout. Harry Kane scored in the second half for England. Yerry Mina scored a header in the end of the second half to draw the game 1-0 for Colombia. And Eric Dyer scored the winning goal for England during a penalty shootout. Colombian footballer Yerry Mina has become a star in his country and a role model of his birthplace of Cauca, one of the areas most affected by the country's internal conflict. Mina is one of the top players in Colombia's national football team, but the start of his career was not easy. 23-year-old Mina was born in a humble home in Huachené, an Afro-Colombian community which, like other municipalities in northern Cauca, was coveted by different armed groups. Mina has become a role model for kids playing on a makeshift football fields.
All kids today say, I want to be a football player. Yerry has crossed borders, has played a big role. He's doing well abroad, and today he's a world figure. And in the near future we will have many Yerry Minas here in Huachené.
Parents sometimes didn't have enough money to pay for the ride to go and train in Cali, to pay football trainers or to buy equipment. When you find yourself in the middle of all that difficulty, you need to have a strong will to become a big star in football.
Colombian football fans in Russia trying to get tickets to watch their home team face the prospect of being ripped off. Touts are selling tickets for nearly 5 to 9 times the original value.
Colombians are trying their very best to get their hands on tickets at the FIFA Ticket Center. But that doesn't stop them from being preyed upon by touts trying to make a quick buck. They've been speaking about their frustrations while trying to buy tickets.
We are at the FIFA Ticket Center trying to get tickets, but there are a lot of people reselling tickets, and they're trying to rip us off with overpriced tickets, like 9 times higher than the original price. We don't understand how people are selling 20 tickets or more, because one thing is to resell one ticket for personal reasons, and another thing is to make money tricking people. The authorities are not doing anything about it.
As much as they are desperate to watch the game, the Colombian fans want tickets at a fair price and are not willing to pay way above market value. Some of them have been in the queues for hours and don't even know whether tickets are available due to the lack of information provided by FIFA.
We have been in the queue for 3 hours or more. FIFA authorities don't give us information. There are tickets available or not. There are a lot of people reselling tickets, but they are trying to rip off fans with inflated prices. We Colombian fans are trying to get tickets at a fair price. We're desperate. We have been here for 3 hours without any luck.
People are trying to take advantage of how much football fans want to get inside the stadium to watch the game and support their teams. That's why they are selling tickets 5 to 9 times higher than FIFA's official price. I think this is wrong, and I think it's bad that the authorities don't have control over this. They are ripping people off.
It's not only the Colombians who face being ripped off. Other reports indicate that English fans are at risk of paying too much for their tickets, not only on the street, but also on Facebook. The release of tickets is big business, with the space being overly competitive. According to some reports, the industry can generate up to $8 million a year.
After today's game, English striker Harry Kane becomes the top goal scorer with 6 goals, followed by Romelu Lukaku from Belgium with 4 goals, and Cristiano Ronaldo from Portugal with 4 goals as well. Sweden advanced to the quarterfinals, eliminating Switzerland 1-0 in St. Petersburg. Swedish midfielder Emil Forsberg scored the winning goal in the second half. Sweden advances to a World Cup quarterfinal for the first time since 1994. Head coaches of both teams reacted after the game.
We work for each other on and off the pitch, and I'm so incredibly happy that it's paying off with these results so far. But for me personally, I'm just very happy that people are thrilled and chanting my name, that they wish us well and that they are delighted. But we are talking football here, and football is a game played by a team. Never forget that.
We're sorely disappointed. The entire team is. We wanted to do more clearly, but we also, of course, congratulate the Swedish team. They've done precisely what they're very good at, and that was enough to beat us. Of course, we should have done things better, but those were the moments where I think we just weren't on par. We were not good enough to win that match.
And football fans across Sweden celebrated the victory. Blind and deaf people in Sao Paulo, Brazil got a chance to embrace the spirit of the World Cup together. During the knockout stage match between Brazil and Mexico, blind people were guided by deaf interpreters who held their hands and moved them around a miniature football pitch, showing them what was happening on the field.
It's interesting to get to know all that is happening right in the moment, and that's the idea today. That's why we are here at the Brazil against Mexico game, and we gather in a big group, about 6 deaf people and blind people. They all have their own little field to follow the game, and of course, we support Brazil.
My name is Carlos. I'm deaf and blind. I'm here to watch a football game. Last game was so exciting, and I had so much fun watching how Philippe Coutinho or Neymar scored. They made a goal by the end of the game, and I also love Marcelo's game. I think this World Cup is so exciting, really good.
Migrants from Syria, Afghanistan, Cameroon, and Ivory Coast formed teams to play a series of matches in Moscow's Red Square. The games were organized by an anti-discrimination network, FARE, and the Civic Assistance Committee, which helps migrants and refugees in Russia. In 2018, UN Refugee Agency assisted 9,000 migrants and asylum seekers in Russia.
We never did this since we arrived in Russia. It's the first time that we could be invited to play football. It's really fun for us. It brings us joy, so we're asking Russia to give us an opportunity. Football players like us who are here, we can also express ourselves.
I support Portugal and Russia. Russia since it's the country I live in, and Portugal and Cristiano Ronaldo because he's the best player in the world. Since Portugal is knocked out of the round of 16, I now support Russia and I hope they progress and reach the final.
The round of 16 is over. Only 8 teams advance to the quarterfinals. Uruguay will play against France. Neymar and Brazil will face Belgium. Host country Russia will play against Croatia. And Sweden will face England. And that's all for today's Telesur Russia 2018 headlines. Don't miss our exclusive show, De la Mano del 10, the World Cup according to Maradona, only on Telesur English. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Back to you, Soini.
Thank you, Jose Daniel, for that report. The CARICOM heads of government are set to begin their meeting in Jamaica on Wednesday evening. Among their concerns, the findings of the Bruce Golding report on the CARICOM single market and economy and the troublesome issue of intra-regional travel.
When we did the assessment of the CSME, there are some countries who have only put in, for instance, in the legislation, 5 of the 10 areas that are agreed upon for movement of skills, and that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. We have to move towards it. Now the court has ruled that if you don't have the legal the law in place, you can manage it administratively, and some of them are doing it. But administrative arrangements does not guarantee something as much as a law would.
So, what is CARICOM?
The Caribbean Community, better known as CARICOM, is a grouping of 20 countries, 15 full members and 5 associate members, stretching from the Bahamas in the north to Guyana in the south. Most member countries are island nations. The membership is multicultural and multilingual. CARICOM was created through the Treaty of Chaguaramas, which was signed on the 4th of July, 1973, and came into being August 1st of that year. The CARICOM website describes it as the oldest surviving integration movement in the developing world. CARICOM has 4 main areas of interest: economic integration, foreign policy coordination, human and social development, security. In recent years, issues of trade and freedom of movement have been central for CARICOM. And with the hurricanes of 2017, questions of climate change, resilience, and disaster management have come to the fore. How is CARICOM run? Heads of governments of member states have an important role in the decision-making of CARICOM. Decisions taken at their meetings tend to be unanimous. The various heads of government form a quasi-cabinet, and each member is given a portfolio. The chairmanship is rotated every 6 months. The quasi-cabinet meets regularly to discuss matters of joint interest.
Thousands of Argentine teachers marched in Buenos Aires to demand an increase in salaries as they say their current ones leave them below the poverty line. The teachers, carrying banners and signs and accompanied by beating drums, made their way through the city streets on their way to the Argentine Ministry of Education to demand a salary increase of at least 15%. The march coincides with a one-day national strike by the teachers, which is the 5th so far for this year in Argentina.
Argentine teachers are living with salaries below the poverty level, and when we demand to rise above poverty, which means being able to buy a book, to go to the theater, to eat decently, when we demand this, they repress us, and we strike. But this doesn't make us forget our main point. We're striking because we're at our limit, but we continue to fight to rise above poverty.
Campesinos in the north of Argentina are organizing against forced evictions and real estate companies that seek to steal their lands to hand them over to agribusiness.
Campesino families that have historically worked and lived in these lands are now threatened not just by the big landowners, but also by the state itself. The El Pongo government estate in Jujuy covers over 11,500 hectares. 350 families work an average of 3.5 hectares each. They have been here for 4 generations, but now the state has increased their rent.
They want to keep the land themselves, to privatize it and take away our way of livelihood. That's why the rent has gone up to levels even higher than on private land.
In Palma Sola, small farmers who live from raising cattle are being backed into a corner.
We're being trapped. We're losing our land. Everyone here is in bad shape because they take away everything. We don't have a corral for our cows. We cannot take them to graze in the open fields anymore.
We have lodged all our complaints. We have followed the law and gone to the Ministry of the Environment to demand they stop illegally taking away our property.
Campesinos in Perilagos filed for a preventative measure against a government project in Jujuy that threatens to remove them from their land.
This is part of a great real estate business promoted by the government of Jujuy. This is one of 2 ways the dominant classes can threaten campesino communities. The other is through agribusiness. Big landowners push us into a corner until eventually they take everything away from us.
The campesinos say they are willing to fight for their lands in any way they can.
We're going to take another short break, but join us again after another look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Police officers have arrested tens of thousands of protesters in front of Philadelphia's Immigration and Customs Enforcement building. The police have said they've removed nearly 30 people blocking the building who gathered in a call for the abolition of ICE. Protests against the agency ramped up after the Trump administration began implementing its zero-tolerance policy. And it's now reversed the practice of separating parents from their children at the U.S.-Mexico border who try to enter the country illegally. The Yemeni army, backed by Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, have bombed Houthi-held positions outside of Hodeidah, killing and internally displacing civilians. Hospital sources said 11 civilians had been killed on Sunday and Monday as the Houthis came under fire. Other residents took refuge in neighboring villages, while some were struck without provisions and aid. Republican U.S. senators have met with Russian officials in Moscow ahead of a planned meeting between President Trump and Putin in Helsinki later this month. On a visit, the senators touched on the most controversial issues, including Ukraine, Syria, and alleged election meddling by the Russians. The U.S. delegation met with the Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, and lawmakers from the lower house, Duma, and Senate. French President Emmanuel Macron touched down in Abuja, Nigeria, to meet with his counterpart Muhammadu Buhari in the aim of supporting the country against terrorism. Macron is in Nigeria to strengthen ties with the country and talk about security. Macron promised to support Buhari in his fight against the Islamist insurgency led by Boko Haram. And finally, animals at the Paris Zoological Park savored frozen treats as temperatures reached 30 degrees Celsius in the French capital on Tuesday. To relieve the animals of the summer heat, zookeepers fed them their favorite foods frozen into ice cubes. Some also enjoyed fresh sprinkles and water misters. Big cats panted in the shade, while marine mammals such as sea lions dove into pools in an effort to cool down. The Paris Zoological Park houses more than 2,000 animals from 180 species, including lions, snakes, lemurs, and penguins. And before we finish our show, here's a short reminder that you can watch our special World Cup program with the Argentinian football star Diego Armando Maradona. De la mano de Diez, the World Cup, according to Maradona, will air only on Telesur every night throughout the tournament in Russia, and these are the times to watch it. Please don't miss them. Well, that brings us to the end of this newscast. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website on telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for Telesur English. I'm Sunny Gray. Thank you so much for watching. You're watching Telesur English. I'm Sunny Gray, and these are the headlines at this hour. Ecuador's National Court of Justice has ordered the detention and extradition of former President Rafael Correa. He has been named in relation to the alleged kidnapping of the former politician Fernando Balda in Colombia in 2012. Correa supporters have been protesting for weeks over what they say are politically motivated charges. The court accepted the request of the prosecutor for Correa to be detained for failing to comply with an order to present himself regularly before the court. Correa, who now lives in Belgium, adamantly denies all accusations against him and presented himself voluntarily at the Ecuadorian consulate in Brussels on Monday. Teachers in Argentina are beginning a 24-hour strike to protest against the repression of their protests in several parts of the country. The teachers' union plan to march to the Ministry of Education in Buenos Aires. They say the police attacked them with rubber bullets and tear gas in the provinces of Chubut and Corrientes last week as they campaigned for a wage increase.
Argentine teachers are living with salaries below the poverty level, and when we demand to rise above poverty, which means being able to buy a book, to go to the theater, to eat decently, when we demand this, they repress us, and we strike. But this doesn't make us forget our main point. We're striking because we're at our limit, but we continue to fight.